Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure we would have heard all that sympathy if it was the Conservative Deputy Prime Minister who was being attacked. I remember when the Prime Minister said that tax evasion is a criminal offence and should be treated as all other fraud. If he had a backbone, he would sack her.
Good day, and welcome back to British Report. Imagine, if you will, the pristine, hushed corridors of number 10 Downing Street. The fine bone china is being rattled, the forensic files are scattered across the mahogany desk, and the Prime Minister's inner circle is currently vibrating with the kind of existential dread usually reserved for people who realise they have accidentally replied to all on a scathing email. Why the sudden panic in the heart of the establishment? Because the Red Queen of the Labour Party, the woman who once occupied the second highest office in the land, has just pulled the pin on a literary hand grenade and rolled it right under the cabinet table. It is not just a policy disagreement or a minor social media spat this time. No, it is far more permanent and significantly more dangerous for Sir Keir Starmer's longevity. Angela Rayner has officially announced her tell-all memoir, and the publishing world is in a state of absolute hysteria. This is not just an autobiography, it is a meticulously planned manifesto for a political comeback, and it is set to detonate right when Starmer is at his most vulnerable. We are witnessing the opening moves of a grand internal chess match where the former Deputy Prime Minister is preparing to tell the unvarnished truth about a leadership that she believes has lost its way. Quick favour, if you are loving this fast-paced, sharp-edged look into the chaos currently tearing through Westminster, hit that subscribe button and click the notifications bell icon. Over 92% of viewers haven't yet. It is free, takes a second and means the world to us. Thanks, if you did. Now back to the show, because the details of this literary ambush are enough to send a shiver down the spine of even the most loyal Starmerite. Now let us get into the absolute meat of this scandal. The political world was rocked this morning by the news that the Bodley Head, an elite division of the publishing giant Penguin Random House, has secured the rights to Angela Rayner's memoirs. Let us be perfectly clear about one thing. Publishers do not engage in high-stakes, multi-million-pound bidding wars for the memoirs of politicians who intend to fade quietly into the background to spend more time with their stamp collection. They buy books that promise to settle scores, reveal the bodies buried under the floorboards, and provide a roadmap for a leadership challenge. Rayner's book, scheduled for release in the second half of 2026, is being described by her camp as Authentically Angela. In the coded language of Westminster, Authentically Angela is a polite way of saying, I am going to say exactly what I think of the North London lawyers who tried to sideline me and then handed me my P45. This is a monumental threat to Sir Keir Starmer because it bypasses the traditional media filters and speaks directly to the soul of the Labour grassroots. Alice Skinner, the editorial director at the Bodley Head, could barely contain her excitement when she stated that the book will be unvarnished and upfront. For a Prime Minister whose entire brand is built on being varnished, polished and forensic, those two words are probably the most terrifying things he has heard since his last set of polling numbers. An unvarnished Rayner is a Rayner who tells the truth about the internal friction of 2025, the heated arguments behind closed doors over the family farm tax, and the perceived lack of backbone in the current leadership. This is not just a rags-to-riches story starting from her impoverished childhood in Stockport. It is a tactical strike designed to contrast her raw, working-class energy with the Prime Minister's perceived coldness. While Starmer is busy trying to manage the optics, Rayner is busy managing the narrative, and she is doing it with the backing of one of the most powerful publishers in the world. To understand why this book is so dangerous, we have to transition back to the meltdown of September 2025. This was the moment the music stopped for the former Deputy Prime Minister. Angela Rayner was forced to resign as Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary, following a messy, protracted row over underpaid stamp duty on a property in Hove. For a woman whose entire political identity is built on being a champion for the common person, the optics were admittedly disastrous. Sir Keir Starmer, ever the man of rules and regulations, allowed the ethics advisor's report to effectively dictate her exit. Many of Rayner's allies saw this as a cold-blooded betrayal, a leader sacrificing his most popular lieutenant to save his own skin. The memoir will undoubtedly cover this period in excruciating detail. It will be her chance to explain the incorrect legal advice she received, and more importantly, to describe how it felt to be cut loose by the man she helped put into power. If Starmer thinks she is going to be kind in her recollections, he has clearly forgotten the scum comments of years past. Despite the circumstances of her departure, Angela Rayner remains an absolute powerhouse of influence within the Labour Party. She is the Red Queen for a reason. She commands the loyalty of the unions and the grassroots in a way that Starmer can only dream of. According to the betting markets, her housing tax row has not dampened her hopes of one day replacing the Prime Minister. In fact, odds published this morning suggest she is the second most likely person to take over the top job should Starmer be toppled next year. She is currently trailing only the Health Secretary Wes Streeting in the succession stakes. This creates a fascinating Game of Thrones dynamic within the cabinet. While Streeting tries to fix the NHS, Rayner is writing a book that could potentially destroy the man who currently holds the keys to the kingdom. It is a pincer movement of ambition that has left Number 10 in a state of permanent bunker mentality. Speaking of bunkers, let us look at Sir Keir Starmer's rather desperate strategy to avoid a leadership challenge. The Prime Minister is fully aware that the May 2026 local elections are expected to be a total bloodbath for the Labour Party. With farmers protesting in the streets and the cost of living still biting, the electorate is in a foul mood. To counter the inevitable calls for his resignation after a disastrous set of results, Starmer has devised what insiders are calling the May manoeuvre. He intends to confirm the next King's speech for May 12 or 13, just a week after the voters go to the polls. This is a move of pure cynical genius. In the British constitutional tradition, it is considered the height of disloyalty to challenge a Prime Minister while the sovereign is literally in the building to unveil the government's agenda. Starmer is essentially trying to use the king as a human shield against his own backbenchers. A government source told the BBC that it will be much harder for somebody to challenge the Prime Minister when the king is about to announce the legislative programme for the year. It is a play for time, a way of forcing the plotters to back down by wrapping himself in the flag and the monarchy. But many Labour MPs have already earmarked those local elections as Starmer's final chance. If the party loses hundreds of seats and the red wall continues to crumble, no amount of royal pomp and circumstance will save him. The May manoeuvre might buy him a week, but Angela Rayner's memoir will be a permanent record of his perceived failures. The Prime Minister is trying to survive the next 14 days, while Rayner is planning for the next 14 years. The contrast between the two figures is becoming the defining story of British politics in 2025. On one hand, you have Starmer, forensic, cautious, and increasingly isolated. On the other, you have Rayner, authentic, unvarnished, and backed by a £1 million book deal. The publishers at Penguin Random House clearly believe that the public wants to hear her vision for a fairer, kinder society, a phrase that sounds suspiciously like a campaign slogan for a leadership bid. Alice Skinner of the Bodley Head even suggested that the book will spark change, one reader at a time. In Westminster terms, sparking change usually involves a change of personnel at the very top. Rayner is positioning herself as the antidote to the Starmageddon of the current administration. What makes this obliteration so effective is that it is happening in slow motion. Usually, when a minister resigns in a cloud of tax scandal, they disappear into the lucrative world of after-dinner speaking and corporate consulting. Not Angela Rayner. She has remained popular, she has remained influential, and she has remained in the headlines. By choosing to publish her memoirs so soon after her departure, she is ensuring that her version of events becomes the definitive history of the Starmer government. She is not waiting for the historians to judge her, she is writing the history herself, and she is doing it with a voice that resonates with the people who feel abandoned by the current leadership. The bidding war for her book was not just about her past, it was a bet on her future. Let us transition to the successor race, because the betting markets are giving us a fascinating glimpse into the post-Starmer era. Wes Streeting is currently the favourite at 10-3, but his position is precarious. While he is polished and media-savvy, he lacks the grassroots grit that Rayner possesses. Rayner, sitting at 11-self, is the dark horse who has already been through the fire. The fact that her odds have actually improved since her resignation tells you everything you need to know about the lack of confidence in the current leadership. Many MPs believe that if the May elections are the disaster everyone expects, the party will crave a leader who can actually relate to the working-class voters they are losing to Reform UK. Rayner is that leader, and her book is her opening pitch to the nation. Sir Keir Starmer's attempts to strategize his way out of this are becoming increasingly frantic. The King's Speech manoeuvre is a short-term fix for a long-term problem. You cannot govern by gimmick, and you certainly cannot govern by hiding behind the monarchy. The men in grey suits in the Labour Party are watching the polling numbers with a sense of growing alarm. They see a Prime Minister who is out of his depth, and a former deputy who is finding her voice. The suspense is building toward a May 2026 showdown that could see the most significant shift in British politics since the general election itself. Angela Rayner's memoir is the ticking clock in the background of every meeting in Number 10. The irony is that Starmer's own forensic nature has led him to this point. By being so obsessed with the rules during Rayner's tax row, he alienated his most important ally. He chose the process over the person, and now that person is about to tell the world exactly what that process felt like from the inside. It is a classic Shakespearean tragedy, where the leader's greatest strength, his adherence to the law, becomes his greatest weakness in the messy human world of politics. Rayner is not a lawyer, she is a politician who understands that authenticity beats accuracy every single time in the eyes of the voter. Her book will be a celebration of that authenticity, and it will be a devastating critique of the man who lacks it. As we wrap our heads around this literary coup, we must consider the impact on the public. The British people are tired of standard politicians' memoirs that are ghostwritten by committee and vetted by a dozen lawyers. They want something unvarnished. They want to know what it is really like to sit in a cabinet meeting while the country is on strike and the Prime Minister is worrying about his King's Speech schedule. Rayner is promising to give them exactly that. She is promising a vision for a fairer society that isn't just a list of bullet points in a manifesto. It is a vision rooted in her own difficult upbringing and her rise through the ranks. It is a story that millions of people can relate to, and it is a story that Keir Starmer simply cannot tell. The May manoeuvre might prevent a challenge on May 14, but it won't prevent the publication of the book in the autumn. Starmer is fighting a rearguard action against a woman who has nothing left to lose. He has taken her job, he has taken her office, and he has taken her title, but he cannot take her story, and he certainly cannot take her influence. The Red Queen is returning to the board, and she is playing for keeps. Westminster is bracing itself for a winter of discontent followed by a spring of rebellion, and at the centre of it all is a book that hasn't even been titled yet. Perhaps I could suggest one: How to Destroy a Prime Minister in 10 chapters. In conclusion, Sir Keir Starmer is currently presiding over a government that is more interested in survival than in service. He is using the sovereign as a shield, while his former deputy is using a pen as a sword. The bidding war at Penguin Random House has confirmed what many of us have suspected for a long time. The real power in the Labour Party no longer resides in the Prime Minister's office. It resides with the woman who is about to tell the unvarnished truth to a nation that is hungry for change. The local elections in May 2026 will be the final chance for Starmer, but for Angela Rayner they will be the beginning of a new chapter. Thank you so much for watching.